I want you to know that I'm signing now, as we speak, Israel's official recognition of Somaliland and its right of self-determination.
Israel has recognized Somaliland as an independent state, becoming the first country to do so. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the decision will allow Israel to expand cooperation with Somaliland in areas including agriculture, health and technology. Somaliland's president has described the move as historic and has said the territory intends to join the Abraham Accords. Somalia has rejected the recognition, describing it as a violation of its sovereignty, and the decision has prompted an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. A number of Security Council members have criticised Israel's move, while the United States has defended Israel's right to recognise Somaliland, comparing it to decisions by other nations to recognise a Palestinian state. The development raises important questions about recognition, sovereignty, and international law, and about how such decisions are made under international legal frameworks. Joining me to discuss those issues is UKLFI Charitable Trust Legal Director Natasha Hausdorff. Natasha, welcome.
Thank you, David.
Natasha, how significant is Israel's move, and was it within its rights to do it?
Well, from the perspective of international law, certainly, it is every sovereign state's right to conduct its own foreign policy in the matter it sees fit, and the question of one state recognizing the existence of another has always been squarely within that preserve. In terms of the strategic implications of it, much of this has of course been discussed over the last few days, but especially in light of Israel's ongoing war with Iran and its proxies, the proximity of Somaliland to the Houthis in Yemen, just across the Gulf of Aden, is hugely significant, as are the implications of this recognition for cooperation, coordination between Somaliland and Israel, the prospect of the Abraham Accords, and the very supportive attitude of the United States to this development. Indeed, before this administration, there was talk also of the United States potentially recognizing Somaliland.
Natasha, from an international law perspective, how would Somaliland qualify for recognition versus, say, the merits of a Palestinian state?
Well, there's a difference in international law between the existence of a state as per the recognized criteria under the Montevideo Convention. This is now a matter of customary international law. So the requirements for statehood, which are a defined territory, a permanent population, government, and the capacity to enter into international relations. So on the basis of its fulfillment of those recognized criteria in international law, it is, by those reasons, a state. In light of Somaliland's fulfillment of those criteria, and indeed of Israel's recognition, which follows the constitutive theory that recognition is also very important in terms of the formation of states in international law, the response has been surprising, especially the incorrect invocation of international law in some of the responses to Israel's recognition. I note in particular South Africa's press release stating that it was concerned by this recognition, that it considered it to be a violation of the Federal Republic of Somalia's sovereignty. And it explicitly stated that South Africa upheld the African Union's principle of uti possidetis, the sanctity of inherited borders, as the continent's essential safeguard against conflict. Well, some of our viewers may be familiar with this rule of uti possidetis juris that states that the administrative boundaries of states emerging from a colonial context principally become their recognized international borders. And when we consider the formation of Somaliland out of the British protectorate, British Somaliland, then this particular invocation of uti possidetis by South Africa in order to seek to criticize Israel's recognition is in fact a complete inversion and wrong application of that rule. If anything, uti possidetis juris would be used or could be used by Somaliland to underpin its call for its own independence. Indeed, it was as a result of a separate agreement after its immediate independence in the 1960 that it sought a union with Somalia, which it then, upon declaring independence in 1991, withdrew from. So this is another area, in fact, in which these very important rules of customary international law, these principles of international law, seem to very much fall by the wayside, or worse still, are inverted and entirely wrongly presented in order to pursue, it seems, a particular political agenda.
Israel's move to recognize Somaliland prompted an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. What did you make of that, and what are the implications, if any, of it?
Well, the hypocrisy on display at the UN Security Council was remarkable. Not only was there this suggestion that Israel's recognition might breed instability in the region, when I previously mentioned that Somaliland is perhaps the model of stability in a very volatile part of the world, but it also entirely turns these rules of recognition of states and of the constitutive elements of statehood on their heads. And ultimately, it's deeply hypocritical when one considers this in contrast to the purported recognition by many of those UN Security Council members of a non-existent state of Palestine, a supposed state, alleged state that does not comply with the recognized criteria of statehood. Here it is being suggested that the recognition of a state that does in fact fulfill those criteria is in some way problematic. And the flip side of that is that the recognition of a supposed state of Palestine, which ultimately constitutes an attack on the territorial integrity of the state of Israel, is something that didn't just pass without critical comment, but was in fact celebrated by many. All of this really comes down to how international law is best able to foster stability and certainty and peace and international security. And in this respect, again, we are seeing, unfortunately, political agendas driving towards international law being misrepresented. And the excuse for this, in so many respects, is, well, we need to seek to preserve and respect stability and international security. And in fact, this behavior is doing the exact opposite of that, backing the unstable actors like Somalia against Somaliland, and like the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, both deeply, deeply entrenched in terror activities as against the democratic state of Israel. So that trend and that pattern, unfortunately, is one that we're seeing reflected in these developments also. But the upside is that this particular political development and the anticipated coordination, cooperation between Israel and Somaliland will undoubtedly have a positive effect with respect to both Somaliland and Israel's ability to defend themselves against, Iranian proxies in that part of the world. And the fact that this is happening now, as we are seeing reports that the Islamic Republic in Iran is losing control over the streets and is in perhaps the worst position it has ever been in seeking to maintain its political control in an environment where the Iranian people are really rising up in an inspiring and formidable fashion. The timing of this recognition couldn't perhaps be more pertinent.